Now it's the start of the NFL Combine. The drama around Shedeur Sanders is taking a little bit more of a turn. Shedeur deciding not to compete, throw the ball or the workouts or whatnot, and just really interview has sparked some scouts as well as some executives making anonymous comments. Like one said to The Athletic that they think that Shedeur is going to drop. Another writer mentioned to Colin Cowherd why he thinks he could drop. And a Fox Sports analyst points out probably the reason why he could drop. Let's dive into all these crazy takes and actually hear from someone from the NFL. Y'all can tell me if they sound like they're concerned. Dive into that here on the Prime Time for College Football. This video is powered by our partners at BetUS. Check them out. They're hooking up the gamer. 150% bonus on your first deposit of $2,000 by using promo code YouTube150. It's crazy how a lot of people are going through the mindset of saying that Shedeur is going to be a problem, that teams aren't going to really like Shedeur. And a lot of the analysis that I've been hearing has been not about his play on the field. It's really been just like hating on him as a person. And Rob Parker over at Fox Sports kind of explains why he thinks Shedeur is getting all of this hate. Let's hear what he got to say. Then we're going to jump in, hear a coach talk about interviewing Shedeur at the Combine, and Colin Cowherd defends Shedeur. We'll point that out a little bit later, what Colin Cowherd had to say. But let's listen to Rob Parker real quick.
Shedeur Sanders will not be throwing at the Combine later this week. He will be doing interviews and to be determined if he's going to do the medical evaluations. But now you have this report in The Athletic where they spoke to anonymous execs across the NFL. One of the execs told The Athletic that he could see Sanders falling out of the first round altogether. Your thoughts?
Shedeur Sanders has officially reached unlikable status. It's just that simple. Because really, that when other quarterbacks have done it, Caleb Williams didn't drop out of being the first overall pick because he didn't throw, and some of the stuff that he did. And you've already made your resume. The scouts have watched you play in real college football games. How has this changed your mind because he's not throwing? Like to say that to me is ridiculous. I'm not saying if you just say you don't believe in him and you don't think he's good, I buy that. But he's in the unlikable status now because guess what? People don't like how brash he is. His dad was a superstar, Hall of Fame, played baseball and football, pro football, Hall of Fame, right? Look at him as like he's, has a silver spoon in his mouth and things are always being, helped his way or whatever you want to say. So there's some jealousy there. He's rolling around in big cars on college campus. And I think there's a lot of that that's playing into this. And it shouldn't factor in at all, Kelvin. It should just be about his ability. From scouts, not fans. Fans, I understand. Scouts?
Now, I think Rob is right. I think that Shedeur has now hit that point of people just don't like you, dog, because they don't like you. Has nothing to do with you as a player. It's all because a lot of people are just jealous. I mean, he's the son of one of the most famous players to play the game of football, and he's actually good. He's actually got talent. He put up numbers. And so him not throwing and people having issues with that is wild to me, mainly because we've got all of the data you really need to see about Shedeur play. I mean, he's played and thrown so much over the last 4 years. And even Coach Prime mentioned that. You've seen Shedeur. He's started since he was in high school. So the data's there. And if you really care, you watch that stuff, you should be able to see what type of player you could potentially get. I think it's wild that it's become this big of a deal, while at the same time I expected it because it is Shedeur. I mean, Travis Hunter ain't nobody saying questions about him, but Travis is also, out there advocating for his quarterback like crazy and his boy. It's just wild that we expected this to happen, which is pretty disappointing. But at the same time, NFL coach says they like what they see out of Shedeur. We're going to play that clip while also hearing Colin Cowherd defend Shedeur as to why he could be good. But first, some of my partners over there at BetUS, check them out. Hooking up the gamer, 150% bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000, 125% bonus on your second and third deposits up to $2,000 by using promo code YouTube150. And as you know, they've got some fun prop bets over there at BetUS, like you've got some NFL season awards on the special stuff. You've also got Mr. Irrelevant in the draft. So you can pick the position of who's going to be Mr. Irrelevant when it comes to the draft. And so if you want to get into the action, BetUS is going to allow you to do that. Use our promo code YouTube150 to get you 150% bonus on the first deposit, 125% bonus on your second and thirds. And they also got their casino. So if you want to do some table games or, like blackjack and slots, they've got a lot of stuff in there that you can check out all on the site. So check them out. BetUS, gamble responsibly, where the game begins. So it's interesting with Colin Cowherd even defending. He had Albert Breer on and they talked, and then we're going to play what this coach had to say about Shedeur. So let's hear what Colin and Albert Breer was talking about, because I got some thoughts and why I think Colin Cowherd is 100% right.
Shedeur Sanders is dropping in the draft. I said this yesterday. My favorite quality of his, draft status is that he had a terrible run game, the worst in Power 5 for 2 years, and the worst offensive line for 2 years in college football. So he's had to initiate offense. He'll probably go to a team without a great offensive line. There's a reason why so many quarterbacks in the NFL go to Wyoming, Texas Tech, Miami of Ohio, Cal, is that it's a real college experience. It's a real pro experience that you're running for your life with no run support. I think that makes Shedeur more attractive. Why is he falling in the draft? Because it does feel like there's a gradual regression for him.
Well, first of all, I would agree with you on that. I think if you're at Ohio State or Alabama, how often are you going past your out of your first progression, right? How often are you going to number 2? How often are you going to number 3? How often do you have to move in the pocket to make things work, to cover up an issue your offensive line might have? I think all that stuff is 100% valid. And we've seen that with some of the quarterbacks who've come out of the powerhouse schools where they've struggled because they haven't had to find those answers that deep into an individual play, or they haven't had to be as creative in making things happen. I think the issue with Shedeur, and this is going to be a difficult thing for him to address over the next 6 or 7 months, or 6 or 7 weeks, is are you special in any one area? Do you have a superpower trait? Or are you an average athlete with an average arm in an NFL context? And I think that that's the way a lot of teams look at him. He's not a great athlete. He doesn't have a big arm. So where is the superpower that's going to make you want to take him in the top 5? And I think he attached that then to what the teams in the AFC are looking up at. And that's sort of this Mount Olympus of quarterbacks, right? So if you're Tennessee picking first or Cleveland picking second, I'll borrow a term that Daniel Jeremiah used with me a few days ago. It's almost like you have to chase ceiling, because it's not can this guy be a good player? It's can this guy be good enough to compete with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow in the AFC. And, oh, by the way, when you get by those guys, you've still got more guys with a lot of upside in C.J. Stroud and Trevor Lawrence and Bo Nix and Drake May. It's a gauntlet, So, if you draft Shedeur Sanders in the top 5 or top 10 picks, could he get up and running pretty fast? I think he probably could.
Yeah.
5 years from now, are you going to be comfortable giving him $55, $60, $65 million a year? I think that's the question.
Yeah. See, I've always argued that what you don't want to be in the NFL is chaos at quarterback. I think Shedeur Sanders is a little bit like Jared Goff. If he has a good coach, he stabilizes you. That he completes passes, he moves the chains, he's not going to get in trouble, he is very accurate, he stabilizes a tire fire of an organization. And there's about 7 of those a year in the league. He's not going to change the ascension, but you won't have to worry about quarterback for 5 years. He's a grown-up that completes passes, and that's what Jared Goff. He's out of the news, moves the chains. I don't like him in a cold weather. I don't like him against a great player, but there is something to be said. The Raiders need stabilization. The Browns need, the Bears need it. Sometimes in this league, it's not what you can do, it's what you won't do, which is get us in trouble.
Right, and that again, though, like, it's just, are you going to be able to level up and compete on the highest level with
Right.
him? And I agree, like, that he could come in and stabilize that position for a team.
And I think Albert Breer was a little surprised by that with Colin, because Colin is 100% right. The biggest thing you get out of Shedeur Sanders coming in is he is definitely going to be a grown-up. He's been raised with money. He understands how to handle it. He's been raised around attention. He understands how to handle it. And if anything, he has that world of delusion that you're supposed to have in being a pro athlete. Just being an athlete in general. The one thing you have to understand is, in order to be really good as an athlete, you've got to believe you're better than the man across from you. Even if you might not be, you have to have that bit of delusion, that bit of confidence, because you're going up against the best. And in order to make it to the NFL, you have to be part of the top 1% of your current class. They're in college football. He's part of the top 1%. Getting to the NFL, then you got to work your butt off, have the mentality to push to be at the top 1% again, if you want to be legendary, as which Shedeur Sanders wants to be. And so Shedeur's, he's staying quiet. He ain't concerned. As Colin even mentioned it, Shedeur doesn't, let all this stuff bother him. He just goes about, does what he needs to do, does his interviews. It's great. And so the Cleveland Browns interviewed him. Listen to this. Now, y'all tell me, does this sound like a player that teams believe is actually dropped in the draft?
Yeah, spent time with Shedeur today. Spent time with a lot of the players over the last 48 hours. A lot of speed dating going on. But Shedeur is a very, very impressive young man, was raised the right way. Obviously, is a heck of a football player. That's evident off the tape, but really impressed with the person.
That really goes right to what Colin Cowherd was saying. Because Colin basically said that. He's like, you're going to get a grown-up whenever you bring Shedeur Sanders in. That's what teams need. They need that stability. I think the even best part that Colin laid out to me was teams that bring in players that come from really good teams that have nothing but great talent around them, like some of the top of the tops. They struggle at the NFL level because they're not required to do the extra stuff to help elevate their teammates. Shedeur did not to say that the Buffs were just bad, more so saying that he was not there with a whole bunch of quote unquote 5 stars, players that were expected to be at the top. Those Alabama teams for years that you saw, like with Mac Jones and all of them, they were top of the top. And you saw struggles for a lot of them those quarterbacks coming into the NFL. One thing that Colin has always said is the difference between the college quarterback and NFL quarterback is college quarterbacks are throwing to wide open players, where in the NFL you have to throw them open. And I think that that's something that people need to consider and keep in mind, because that truly is what's going on here. Shedeur had to work around lines, and I mean, the analysts are saying it now. They're watching the film, they're like, yeah, the offensive line was just bad. Shedeur worked away around those lines and still completed 74% of his passes on the season. Like, even though he was sacked a lot, it didn't make him panic. And that's what happens with a lot of quarterbacks is when you're dealing with a lot of pressure and you get hit a lot, the best way, ask a defender, ask a defensive football player, they'll tell you the best way to get a quarterback out of that game is to hit him a few times. And that's what they try to do. If you hit them enough, you can rattle them to where they're going to make a ton of mistakes. Shedeur didn't make a ton of mistakes. He made mistakes because he's human, but he didn't make a ton because he wasn't rattled out there, even though, there'd be moments where his offensive line would fail him. He would find a way, motivate them, and the line, do good enough. And when they are in solid situations, he was out there producing. So he wasn't all worked up or nervous because of that. That's what you need out of a quarterback. And I think Colin really hit the nail on the head, pointing that out, that you need a quarterback that's not only going to be a grown-up, one that's, study film, focus. Shedeur doesn't need to be all the famous stuff. He don't need it. He's been raised with it. He's good. And he worked his butt off to be as good as possible to even be able to be in this situation. All he needs to do now is get to a squad that's willing to build around him, give him time, and he'll be good. Let me know what y'all think. Hop in the comments. Definitely want to hear from you, your thoughts. Shout out to our partners at BetUS. They'll hook y'all up. 150% bonus on first deposit of $2,000 by using promo code YouTube150. I got the returning production stuff. We'll drop that video tomorrow. We're going to jump into what the Buffs are looking at going into next season. It's all right. We'll talk soon.